I like to say that a movie doesn't change. The movie is always going to be the same movie, but we change. Our perspective on a film changes with each rewatch.
I think that's kind of true. I mean, I think that movies have, they have different relationships to audiences depending on where you are in your life, but they have different relationships to audiences depending on where they are in their life cycle.
Sure.
Like if you're seeing a movie at a preview screening, it's a very different thing than when you're seeing, in terms of the kind of relatable excitement, it's a very different thing than it is even opening night. And it's certainly a different thing than when when you're seeing at a revival house or you're seeing at its 10-year anniversary. The audience changes and the movie doesn't, but your relationship to it continues to hopefully deepen.
Well, so watching it this time around, watching the film however many years later, I realize I associate more with Somerset, where I used to associate with Mills. Do you feel that way as your relationship evolved with these characters?
Well, look, I would frighten you by telling you that I feel it's essential, if you're going to be effectively enabling an actor to give you their best, you'd better relate to all of them. So sure. I hate to tell you, I relate to John Doe and I relate to Tracy and I relate to Somerset and yeah, I certainly relate to Mills. But that's the job, I'm not to say that one is not clearly the antagonist.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I hope you appreciate this. My wife watched it with me on the rewatch. So I think the last time that she probably saw it was in theaters with me in 1995. Okay. Jeez. But when we got to the moment with the sloth body,
yeah,
she actually whispers, he's going to move, because that moment was seared in her brain. Like she instantly remembered that it was going to happen. I'd heard that you didn't tell John McGinley that the body was an actual actor. Is that true? Did you spook him out that way?
That is, it's interesting in a kind of coy, juvenile way. However, okay, the makeup effects endured by our wonderful sloth took, I'm going to say, 6 or 7 hours. I mean, Michael's call was, I think it was midnight in order to have him on set. The makeup was applied, and then he had to be transported because they were gelatin, he had to be transported in a kind of semi-refrigerated, not an ambulance, but like a van and then he had to be carried on that bed because there's all kinds of wires and stuff that went to, I forget exactly what it was. We had tubes and wires and stuff running into it. So he was literally like medevaced up the stairs into the giant penny building and placed and then art directed into that. So the idea that we could keep that a secret is in and of itself, like that would have been an entire act for the game in order to be able to. I don't know how that would have been possible. No, McGinley's just, McGinley likes a big response. So, if you need somebody to jump out of their skin, get John, because he can do it. And by the way, we shot 19 takes of it. So
there's one more rumor about McGinley that I just want to ask while we're on that he improvised the line, somebody call somebody. Do you happen to remember if he improvised that?
He did, but we were asked, it's funny because that happened in the looping stage.
Okay.
We never photographed him saying that line. And we got to the looping. We were doing a lot of, because some of that stuff was, oh God, this is so complicated to explain. Originally, we ran out of time. We only had 58 days with Brad. So Brad left at the end of 58 days. And we didn't have, and New Line wouldn't give us the money to shoot. They didn't feel that the helicopters were necessary. So they were like, well, let's see how it goes, and we'll decide whether we can give you the money to shoot the helicopters. So we shot the sequence, and then we lost Brad. And then a month after he wrapped 12 Monkeys, he came back, and Michael DeLuca had given us another, I believe it was 8 or 9 days of pickups. So
Okay.
we went back to do that. And that's where we made the winning case for adding the helicopters back into it.
Okay.
So the McGinley line that you're talking about was on the looping stage, and he said, "I think at the end I should say something." And I go, "Well, what do you want? What do you think you would say?" And he goes, "I don't know. I think I'd be so upset. I should say." And I said, "What if you just say somebody fucking down there do something?" And
Right.
he said, "Okay, I'll let me." And then he riffed on it like 4 or 5 times. He was looping it all through one of those headsets, you know, the
Okay.
Clearcom headsets that they have. So it had this great kind of timbre to it. And I remember thinking, if you just have a non sequitur that just feels like somebody kind of giving up on, we're not going to be able to affect anything here. We're not going to be, there's not, it's done. It's over. It is what it is. So that's what he came up with. So yes, it is true that it was a late edition, and it came from a place of me. It came from a place of John rightfully identifying that there needed to be some last gasp from California. And then I said, well, try some stuff. And that was the one that we ended up using.
You mentioned bringing up or trying to keep the surprise of sloth and how difficult that would be. I want to talk about, structurally, to me, Se7en needs John Doe's identity to be hidden until you choose to reveal it. How concerned were you at the time? Were you even concerned that audiences would learn about Spacey's involvement and somehow blow the secret? It seems nowadays everything is so scrutinized before a movie even reaches theaters or streaming that we know so much going into it. Back then, what were your concerns?
Well, I think my concern was, okay, so in all fairness, I did not know at the time that we shook hands with Kevin and said, show up next Monday, let's begin. Nobody knew who fucking Kaiser Soze was. Like, he had just wrapped that movie, and
Yeah,
no one
yeah.
knew that he was playing this like evil, twisted genius in that movie. And I probably, and smartly for Kevin, because I probably would have said, "How many twisted evil geniuses can you play in a year?" And but I think we kept the Spacey. I kept the Kevin. I initially asked that when the deal making process was going through, because we were shooting. I think we were probably 5 or 6 weeks into shooting. We had screen tested Spacey. We had screen tested a lot of really interesting versions of John Doe. And we finally got Spacey about 5 or 6 weeks into shooting, as I recall. It wouldn't have been later, because I don't think we shot more than like 12 weeks or 10 weeks. Anyway, when Kevin's deal was coming through, they were like, what billing position would you want Spacey? And I was like, oh man, if you've seen that Kevin Spacey's in the movie and you haven't seen him by reel 4,
Right.
like you're kind of like, I mean, not that people are necessarily keeping track of that, but you're kind of like, for people who do have seen Swimming with Sharks, they're going to be going, that must be the guy.
Yeah.
So I said, why don't you ask his people if it's okay if we put him first thing after the end of the movie? And they came back and they said, as it turns out, he's suggesting the same thing. And I said, great, we're in agreement.
That's awesome. When Somerset is obviously about to retire, his chief says to him, you're not going to be able to, you're going to miss all this. You're not going to be able to leave
Yep.
this behind. He responds that, I just don't understand this place anymore. And so it got me thinking about retirement. I wanted to know your thoughts on retirement. Do you anticipate feeling similarly about the film industry as Somerset felt about his deteriorating city? Do you think
I
about
don't know.
getting out?
No, I feel, I'm very, I'm totally cool with, I mean, I just finished up a Love, Death and Robots, and I got some scripts coming in, and my deal's up in a couple of years. I don't think I will have, I'm not like a competitive to make more kind of
Okay.
person. For me, it's always been like, is there an itch to scratch in that direction? Is there an itch to scratch in this direction? And I, and also, let's be honest, your kids are in their 30s, and you start to go, And you know, further to that, I feel like I'm not sure, you know, it kind of is a young man's game. You know, it's this is a business that requires, and this job especially requires a kind of energy that, you know, 90 people have to feed off of
Right, right.
in order, you know, for any given day. And you do find yourself, you know, at the end of a movie, you know, you can be depending. I mean, I've shot, you know, 150-day movies. So
Mhm.
you're running on fumes at the end of 150 days. So I
Right.
think the question is like, you know, is there, you know, if Aaron Sorkin sends you, you know, I remember I never wanted to make a movie about depositions, but then you read the Social Network and you go, count me in. Um, you know,
Yeah.
so it's always about the material and or about the challenge. And I'm not, you know, I'd love to say that I'm uh, uh, I guess I'm just fundamentally lazy. I'm, I'm
Well,
like,
I wonder if you believe Tarantino when he says he's done at 10, you know, like I don't know if I believe that.
I don't know what that means, but I do know that I know that I have a couple years left on my commitments.
Mm,
I've had almost a year off. You know, the SAG and WGA strike
sure.
really like put a dent in the flow of material. You know, like how and so I spent a year and I remastered or I'm in the process of remastering the third movie, and I did a Love, Death, and Robots,
Mm.
and I'm developing a bunch of stuff. But if somebody said, "Hey, Dave, you can go to the south of France and, you know, bicycle and drink rosé," I might go.
All right, I'll get you out of here on this last one.
Oh, okay, go ahead. Sorry.
No, you're fine. The box has become your most famous co-star in this movie. Do you know where the actual box is today?
Well, again, saying if you're talking about a prop
Yeah.
on a film that I made, you are talking about one of 3 dozen.
Okay.
So no, the box, the idea that there's one box is as cute as the idea of trying to bring an actor totally covered in gelatin bed sores up 3 flights of stairs without anybody seeing it.
Yeah. Mr. Fincher, this is a pleasure, man. I really appreciate your time.
No sweat, Sean. It was fun. That's it. You got
That's
everything you
all I
need.
got. They're kicking me out. Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate it. I'd love to do it again soon sometime.